Hey guys, Dave again. Welcome back to the channel. So, in this one, I want to talk about something that's going on the world stage that we're really not hearing about in the US news, and we're actually going to reference the Japan Times. Yes, I read other newspapers. I've pretty much abandoned US news agencies. Just way too biased, way too much junk in there. So, what am I getting at? So, there's this alliance that exists in the world. It's called the Five Eyes, and you may have never heard of it, and it's okay if you haven't. I really hadn't heard of it until recently. It was started back in 1941, and I'll show you this chart here that highlights, the countries that are in this alliance. So there's five key players, one being Australia, the other Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States. And as you can see as we run down here, these are the agencies from each country that participate in that sort of alliance. So basically what happens is it started back, like I said, in 1941, and they've kept it together for a long time. Some of these countries came in at different points or whatnot. Now, originally, it was working to stop Germany and whatnot and what was going on there. It's since morphed, and really I can't say that it's the best organization, and I say that primarily because basically each country uses the other countries to spy on their own citizens, and then they turn over data, to that individual country's government. So to give you an example, like the UK will reach out to the US and ask the NSA to spy on UK citizens, and then they'll give that information to the UK. Now, what's the benefit to the UK of this? Is it gets to have its citizens monitored, and it doesn't run afoul of its own laws and constitutionality pieces, if you will, to have its citizens monitored to make sure there's no uprising or whatnot. So, Edward Snowden referenced this in his leak back in the day. Edward Snowden described the Five Eyes as the supranational intelligence organization that does not answer to the laws of its own countries. So the Five Eyes, naturally, it now monitors citizens, U.S. included. You're being monitored by other countries, and that information is being turned over to the government. But there's another thing that the Five Eyes does that actually provides some benefit. So that cross-sharing of intelligence between all of them, they tend to use that to focus on China and Russia as well. So these key guys all sort of do that to keep these guys in check. And that five guys, listen to me, I'm starving. The Five Eyes Alliance has come together, and it's actually expanded a little bit, where France, Germany, Japan, and now India are getting involved to help combat some of what China's doing and the rising sort of power that China has, and to some degree Russia. But this alliance has been shaken here recently. So if we look at this article on the Five Eyes, basically what's going on is New Zealand has said it no longer wants to be part of the Five Eyes. So that's kind of a really big deal, especially them being one of the original members, one of them being sort of key to that whole Pacific region. I know they're a small country, but they play a pretty important role. So if we look at this article that's in the Japan Times, and that's the international minister there for New Zealand. So basically, she came out and said that New Zealanders are no longer comfortable with this long-standing alliance and the pitch of the anti-Chinese sentiment. So some context here. China's New Zealand's largest trading partner. I think they do roughly around 29% of all of their trade with just China. China's made some significant investments into New Zealand. They also send a lot of tourists over to New Zealand. So there's a lot of financial implications for New Zealand here in alienating China. China's leader, Xi Jinping, basically came out and hailed this as a great thing. You know, lauded all over New Zealand for choosing themselves over choosing the Five Eyes. So don't get me wrong, China sees the benefit in this too. So why do I bring this up? So this isn't really the only country breaking with alliance with the U.S. as far as it comes to anti-China sentiment. If we look, the Philippines president Duerte, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, he's also reluctant to attack China. He's been a longstanding ally. He just China's totally ramping up their South China Sea exploration. And for those that don't know about the South China Sea, it's the second largest shipping area in the world. It's the key maritime as far as fishing goes. There's billions in reserves of oil and natural gas there. So it's a very strategic place. Now, China's building up man made islands and trying to lay claim to a lot of the South China Sea. Multiple countries across the globe have disregarded China's claim to this, but China doesn't really care and they continue to push and test the boundaries. They currently have April 6th, they deployed a ton of commercial vessels, tied them together, and they're just sitting there anchored to test the U.S. They're testing Biden to see what his response to this will be. Right now, there hasn't been one. I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be interesting to see. But a lot of the U.S. allies in the region are abandoning us, and for several reasons. The main one that we're really going to talk about here is, you know, the opinion of the U.S. on the world stage has really, really dropped. I mean, it's really, really bad. So if we take and we can look at this next article from the Japan Times. And keep in mind, Japan is a really big ally for us. And the same with Australia. And if you go see any Australian late night television programming, think like the Tonight Show or whatever, they're rampantly making fun of the US. Like we are not in high standing around the globe. Like so if we look at this Japan Times article, in this one, they're starting to question our military might. I know last night we saw Joe Biden's State of the Union address. He came out and he said, America's military might is unchallenged, greatest military in the world. I don't think a lot of the rest of the world sees it that way. They're looking at 3 or 4 big failures here. You think Korea, you think Vietnam, you think Afghanistan. I mean, we kind of went into these areas. Some we lost, some you can't say that we won, and we left a mess in our wake. And that doesn't even count like the Arab Spring nonsense that went on back underneath of Biden. The mishandling of that debacle. How they tried to get democracy and then ultimately fell back into a military coup. You know, we have a lot of internal problems in this country, and they're really manifesting, and we're making a lot of mistakes out into the world. So, here's another website that interviewed Australian teens and Australian citizens. You know, who do you think is the greatest threat to the world? And the United States continually top this list. You know, it's not China. And I know in this country we're told all the time, hey, it's China. And I'm not pro China and anti American. Like, I'm super on board for America, love America. I love living here. It's my home. I will defend it. But I think we have to have a hard look and an honest conversation about what is going on. You know, China and Russia are doing things to undermine the U.S. Absolutely. Are they doing some things wrong? Absolutely. Do they need to be addressed? Yes. But we're doing some things too. Uh, I just all of this mess to me just is really taking a toll on the world stage. We're in a dangerous situation in that the dollar is the world reserve currency. And when it stops becoming the world reserve currency, we as Americans are going to feel that harder than anyone, and it's going to really hurt. I encourage you to go watch my video, Buy Guns and Ammo Before This Happens. And in that, it details what happens when the petrodollar fails. You know, so there's another video I have too, and these came out back in January and February. One is why does America give money to other countries? And it breaks down and it explains to you how China's using its economic influence and its newfound affluence to impact some of these other countries. When you hear me talk about the investment in New Zealand, like that video really goes into what they're doing in Africa and how that's changing and how they're making allies. They're reinvesting in these countries. Go watch the video. It details it way more than I'm going to here. But the world is seeing them in a positive light, and they're not seeing us in a positive light. And we need to change that. We all need to come together. We need to figure out how to get along and make this work. This divisiveness that's going on inside of the country is not helping. The rest of the world is seeing it, and they don't want to be associated with us anymore. Like, we've got to change some things. There's some dark storm clouds out here, and our friends are leaving us, especially at a time when we're going to need them most. Russia and China are working together. Russia's dumped all of their U.S. treasuries. They used to be one of our largest holders. They don't have any anymore. They're pivoting to euros and gold. China and Russia are buying up all of the gold to bolster their own currencies. Like, it's bad. I'll link some articles. I'll link another website to the Fed where you can see who owns U.S. treasuries. Russia's nowhere on that list. They move a lot of oil. They do a lot of trading with different partners. I think the petrodollar's in a lot of trouble, and I think it's coming sooner rather than later. We're busy squabbling internally about ourselves and what's going on in here and whatnot, and the rest of the world doesn't care. They're moving on, and they're moving on from America, and we need to look up, pick our head up, and see what's going on around us and how our actions are impacting everything else. So, not trying to be doom and gloom. Please look at the references, look at the links, look at some of the articles that I'll post down here. Draw your own conclusions. If you think I'm wrong in the comments, tell me why. Please back them up with facts. Don't just make arbitrary, nasty comments. Let's have a real discussion. Let's take a real look at this. This is really happening, and it's really, really scary. And if we don't do better, we're going to war. And I don't want to do that. But all right, I'll catch you guys in the next one.